So we've been hearing a lot about, well, some people have been hearing a lot about Cardano and how there's another upgrade happening. And I think that we should start off by saying that often Cardano is the boy who cries wolf with their upgrades, and they're not usually that important, and they're little and they're incremental. But in this case, it's kind of a bigger deal. So this is the Vasil hard fork to Cardano, and a hard fork is a non-backwards compatible change to the platform. And what we're doing in this case with Cardano is upgrading its script. So the language is written in Haskell, but there's this script called Plutus, and it is going to be updated to Plutus version 2. And what it's going to do is enable the smart contracts that Cardano keeps touting it's going to be doing, or it can do, but not many people are doing, and it's a little clunky, but it's getting there. So it will upgrade the way that the smart contracts are written. It's going to make it more efficient. And all of this is supposed to happen tomorrow. So it's going to kick in tomorrow, and people are super excited about it. Not to say that the price has reflected that people are super excited about it, because it's kind of still going down just like the rest of crypto. But yeah, so it's a conversation that is out there among the Cardano heads and people who are into ADA, its native token. So Cardano has always billed itself as being a smart contract platform, but in the spirit of a lot of crypto projects, it moves slowly, and it moves super slowly. But in order to kind of keep the narrative going, it likes to tout these big projects, or at least big upgrades. But this one actually seems to be a biggish one. So Adam, I know how much you love talking about Cardano. Go ahead.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these projects that got kicked off sort of in the 2017, 2018 post-ICO era, really are still kind of struggling to find their niche in all of this, right? And a big question was, well, a big part of our value proposition is that we're using proof of stake, or we're using something other than proof of work. And now with Ethereum having made the jump to that, again, sort of those factors diminish a little bit. So again, I think for people who are big fans of the Cardano project, this is probably a big deal, much anticipated. I think that for the rest of us, again, like there's a lot of people out there who are just kind of waiting to see what is this environment really going to look like. And that's not really something that's dependent on upgrades. I think we've seen that thoroughly with Ethereum, pulling off what was a very complex upgrade, very much so, while at the same time, that did not have any sort of positive impact on its price. I think we saw a $50 bump or something like that. As it stands right now, like there's reality over here, and then there's macroeconomic concerns over here, and macroeconomic concerns are driving the car, at least for the time being. Jen?
Yeah, I don't really got much on this. Christy, I want to hear from you, though. Like, for me, who is not super up to date on what's happening with Cardano, what's the main thing I should take away from this? Like, what should the audience, if we zoom out of the story, really take away from the story?
Well, this is a very technical upgrade. So there isn't really a lot that users are going to take away from this, other than the fact that Cardano has taken another step forward on its roadmap. If you want to get super technical, it's going to allow inputs and UTXOs, those are unspent transaction outputs, to be used in scripting contracts without spending them. What does that mean? It's just a thing that is going to be happening, and it's not something that the average person is going to really have to deal with. I think the interesting thing here also, though, is kind of what Adam was alluding to with Ethereum switching to proof of stake. I think there are going to be platforms that are the so-called, Cardano gets lumped in with the Ethereum killer platforms because it uses what's called a delegated proof of stake system. So it's a proof of stake model. And it has always been doing that. So far, many of the Ethereum killers have been proof of stake based, and they've been touting, all of the advantages of proof of stake over Ethereum. Well, now Ethereum's proof of stake. So what's the value proposition here? Cardano does smart contracts. Well, hey, so does Ethereum on proof of stake now. So I think that what's going to be interesting is as they do their little incremental progress reports, is it really going to have a market? Adam?
Yeah, one final thought. So Cardano, one of the things that's unique about it is that it uses a UTXO model, as you said, or unspent transaction output. That means that in some ways it works a lot like Bitcoins. Let me just talk about that for a second, because it is somewhat important to understand in how these different blockchains work. So when you're looking at something like Bitcoin, what you're basically looking at when you're sending Bitcoin is you're combining together all these little pieces of Bitcoin. So you might have a piece of Bitcoin that's worth 0.1 of a Bitcoin, and then another piece that's worth, a whole Bitcoin. And what you're trying to send is 0.15 of a Bitcoin. And so what it'll do is it'll take that one Bitcoin that you have and it'll cut it into two pieces. One that sends the amount to whoever by creating effectively a bill that's worth 0.15, and then it'll take the rest of it and it'll give it back to you in change minus whatever the fees are to send it on the network. That's different in a lot of ways than how something like Ethereum works. Ethereum works a lot more like a checkbook, where you're writing a check and then the blockchain is your bank. So that means that in some ways, it's actually easier to track transactions, and it allows you to do some pretty cool things also, like create colored coins and other types of scenarios using a UTXO-based model that you can't get away with an Ethereum account-based system. So that's one of I think, the most important differentiators when it comes to Cardano. And when you're talking about using smart contracts in a situation like that, there are some interesting implications from that. So we definitely could see something happen with this, but as with so many of these projects, again, they're just so early in their life cycle, relatively speaking, that we're still kind of all just speculating on what are these things going to be. So this is an important step towards sort of that eventual vision, because smart contracts are important, but we need to see a lot more before we can declare a winner here.